City Council, Minnetrista City Council meeting for April 7th to order. Would you join us, stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, unfortunately, Mayor Fisher's not going to be present tonight. Sounds like she's under the weather, unfortunately. So bear with me, please. This is not something that I'm very good at or had much experience, but I think we'll muddle through it with the help of staff. We do have to appoint an acting mayor.
I make a motion to appoint Mark Vanderlinde as acting mayor.
Second it.
Do we a vote on this?
Yes.
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 Yes, vote yes.
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. I guess I'm in. You're stuck with me. Do we have a persons to be heard? Is it, do we have the sheet?
If I could, Mayor, the next item on the agenda, if you want to do introductions, and then we'll need to approve the agenda,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll do persons to be heard, if that's okay?
Okay.
See, Mike, why don't you ask if there's somebody here to talk, because I don't think there was a sheet out there. There isn't one out there.
Okay, okay.
I think there is somebody here.
Okay.
Through.
You request for persons to be heard?
Yes.
I would like to speak, Lady Mrs. Richard Wallace, Portland Development.
Okay, that is on the agenda,
Correct.
so.
But it won't be a public hearing, so
Yeah.
it'll be your discretion.
Right, so maybe we should let them speak, persons to be heard, being it's not a public hearing, right?
Yeah, you can either probably do one of two things, Mayor, and that is either allow folks to talk now, or when that agenda item comes up for discussion, after staff has a presentation, you could ask if anyone has any comment.
Why don't we do that? Makes sense. So you need, you said introductions?
Correct, would you like to introduce the council
Oh.
and staff?
Okay, we said staff, Mike Funk, Ron Beatty, David Abel, Mike Baroni, and our chief of police is Paul Falls. To my left is Arlene Donahue, council, Bob Christians, council, and Mark Erickson, our city engineer. And persons to be heard, anyone here tonight for persons to be heard? Ms. Hoffman, would you like to speak? Persons to be heard?
That's fine.
Okay, if you could come up to the podium, please.
Do I use the mic?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Joyce Hoffman, and I'm here representing myself and my husband Chuck. And we've been longtime residents of this area. In fact, our family has lived here since 1948. And the property that I'm discussing tonight is property that my husband and I have owned for the last 25 years. And so we are intimately, involved in this property. We know it well. And so what I wanted to do tonight is I wanted to give you a historical perspective of what has happened on that property over the years and what is happening now, and see if we can't get some resolution. Because we have been, asking for some resolution for many, many years. And so I put together a PowerPoint presentation, spent the week doing that, because I wanted to stay on point. I wanted to be able to reflect what I see happening, to reflect what has happened in the past, so that you can get a valid perspective. What I've come to do is to request that you resolve the drainage issue that have caused serious damage, long-term damage to our property and to the lake at 1350 and 1360 Morningview Drive. So that's what we're discussing, okay? So, the first time our family appeared before the council for this matter was on November 24th, 1986. So we have been asking for help on this property since 1986. And this is evidence of our first appearance before the city. We were in the process of, downsizing, moving, and I came across all of this information that my husband had kept over the years. And so at that particular meeting, my husband spoke at 8:05 p.m. Why did he come to that meeting? Because we were told to. And the reason we were told to come to that meeting was because my husband was so sick and tired of the water flowing over our lawn that he had gone out and he had gotten a, what are these things that dig ditches? Whatever it was. And he was starting to dig our ditch because he said, if they aren't going to get rid of the water, I'll get rid of it. Well, it wasn't long before the cops appeared and told us, somebody obviously had reported us, and the cops appeared and said, you have to cease and desist. You cannot be digging on your own property. So my husband, they said, if you want this resolved, you come to the village. So we came to the village, and this is the sketches of our proposed ditch at that time in 1986. We had a small ditch, and I'll tell you how that ditch got there. My husband got a trencher and opened up a small trench to try to drain the water off of our property. And so they allowed us to build a ditch that was 5 feet wide by 1.5 feet deep, which we did. And we put in, so the request that we made at that November 24th, 1986 meeting was to stop the erosion and the runoff, to get permission to widen the ditch. The question asked by my husband from his meeting notes, which he also had, is why are we responsible for water runoff from homes that were built in the area and approved by you? Why is that the case? Permit was given to widen the ditch to 5 feet and 1.5 deep at a length of 275 feet from the guest house to the lake and riprap at the mouth of the ditch. The project was done at our own expense, and it never resolved the problem. And so my husband and I, who is 80 and me 79, have fought this issue for over a third of our life. And it's just gotten to the point that we're tired of it. You know what I mean? And so that's why we're here tonight. Since that time, my husband, who is now incapacitated, has had a stroke, fractured his hip, is not able to be here, has appealed to both the city and the Watershed District on a consistent basis to resolve our problem to no avail. So, evidence of our problem. These are photos that he took on June 22nd, 1986, at the beginning of the flooding and erosion. And that's when he went out and got the backhoe. This just gives you another indication. You don't see any gullies, do you? You don't see any ditches. And this is another indication of the water that was starting to flow. And that was 28 years ago. So, that was then and this is now. What it looked like with a 2013 rain event and now with the snow melting. Now you may look at that and say, well, the lake is flooding. No, the lake was not flooding onto our property. That was water that was flowing onto our property. And here's what it looked like when we got done. A swamp. We have created a swamp on our land. This is what our lawn used to look like. How would you like to look out at the other picture, which I did just before I came here, and not look at this beautiful lawn anymore? Put yourself in my shoes. How would you feel if your property was looking like this? And the reality is, you're going to say, well, maybe it was swampland to begin with. Well, the reality is, when we bought that property, it was a cornfield. Do you think anybody would raise corn on this property today? Do you think they'd even make it pasture land? I grew up as a farm girl. I know there isn't a farmer alive that would plant corn on our property again. So besides what is going on to our lawn, it's also causing erosion and hazardous runoff into the lake. See what's happening to the trees as they're falling and caving in? At one time we mowed across this area. Now we've had to build a bridge to get to the other side of the ditch to mow. Note the garbage in the ditch that ends up in the lake. Then to compound the problem, about 5 years ago, when we requested that something be done to reduce runoff issues, the city dumped rock into a section of the ditch halfway between the lake and the guest house. Well, what do you think that did? As a result of that rock blocking the ditch started filling in at that site, and the ditch started overflowing even more onto our lawn. And as a result of it, the portion of the ditch filling in the mouth of the ditch is now 10 feet across, filled with cattails. We have a swamp, and the riprap is destroyed. And we can't do anything about it because you won't allow us to do anything about it. And that's the sad part. We don't have the money to do something about it, to be perfectly frank. So, where does this runoff come from? Sites that appears to drain into our property: the Hilltop School playground, the West Tonka High School athletic fields, the townhouses on 110 for their overflow culvert, the townhouses on Morning View Terrace, County Road 110, which has 6 storm drains prior to the creek, down the hill on Morning View Drive, etc., and I don't even know where else it's draining from. The photos that follow were taken Sunday, April 6, 2014, showing the progression of runoff from the schools. We just decided to show you one place that we're getting runoff from. So it runs down off of Hilltop School, runs down off the West Tonka High School athletic fields. It runs down through this ditch, and that's the overflow that comes from the 110 townhouses. And it goes into our, it runs into our property here. And the erosion as it enters 1360 Morning View Drive, caused by the runoff. Look at the nice little ditch we have now. And if you go back and look, can you see sort of the concave that we built at one time that you allowed us to do? But now water has just cut its way through there. I mean, water has a force to cut its way through that is unbelievable. Flooding of our yard and the neighbor's yard. Nick Ewing, who's here tonight, has got the same problem now. Now his lawn is all flooded. To add insult to injury, 4 years ago, I had the assessor reevaluate the property at 1360 Morning View Drive. After considering all the erosion and the water damage, he devalued the property by over $400,000. So the city is now losing over $5,000 a year in tax revenue. So we had a property that was devalued by almost 1/2 because of what you are doing with your storm drainage. Because of this flooding, we are now fearful that our guest house, which has been there since the mid-50s, is in danger of being flooded. We have even contemplated making a home there that would be handicap accessible for my husband, but certainly not under these circumstances. We're going to sell our house. We were going to build there. We can't do that. It's absolutely impossible. So, to summarize, what was once a dry, shallow ditch that we mowed and only drained a small amount of water when it rained has now turned into a dump site or a storm sewer. It empties water through 3 culverts into our land, and the runoff problem has been exacerbated as a result of construction in the area where there was once farmland. It has eroded the once shallow ditch to the point that there are now huge gullies, some as much as 4+ feet deep, and all that dirt goes into the lake. So the once hard bottom is now muck up beyond your knees, and the neighbors are having problems getting their larger boats docked in the bay. It deposits debris on our lawn and also into the lake, so we now have a swamp. It empties salt, oil, and road debris onto the lake from County Road 110 and surrounding streets every time it rains. And my son was visiting us about 2 years ago, and he said, "You know, Mom," he said, "I really miss the frogs singing." And it dawned on me. We used to have all kinds of frogs, and when we mowed the lawn, they would jump all over the place. Do you know what? There isn't one frog left. Why do you think that's happening? They don't want to be in toxic stew either. And we don't like toxic. I'm so dry I can't walk. I've got a thing of water. Can I get my water?
Yeah.
Right down there. This isn't my favorite place to be. So, what do you think happened to the frogs? Obviously, they're gone. There obviously is a reason that they aren't there. And so, I think we've got more than issues than, our lawn. we've got a lot of environmental issues. So our request is to clean up the mess created by the city's runoff. We did not create this problem. We never had a flooding problem until all the buildings started taking place around us. That was a dry creek bed that only had water in it when it rained. So I asked, as my husband did 28 years ago, why are we responsible for the water runoff from homes that were built in the area and approved by, this council? And I realize you guys didn't do it. It was councils before you and whatever. But the point is, we have a problem. As I might add, why has it taken so long to resolve this problem? All we want are solutions. So, this is some of the things that my husband thought about years ago. Put in a holding pond where the culverts and the drainage ditches converge on our property. I don't think that'll handle it, nor does he. I think there should also be a holding pond up at the school where all the water runs off from the school and those places, but whatever, I guess this would be a start. Put in a large covered culvert that extends from that pond to beyond our guest house at 1360 Morning View Drive to avoid flooding the guest house and to make the parcel buildable again. Because we could mow across that land where our cottage stands. Now we've got a 4-foot ditch next to our cottage. Widen the ditch from that point forward to avoid flooding of our lawn and the neighbor's lawn. The neighbor is in as bad shape as we are now. Repair the riprap that has been destroyed. Dredge the lake to get rid of the muck that came from our ditch washing away, and use the soil that has been dredged out of the lake to repair the damage to our lawn and that of our neighbor. Do you know what? We have muck up beyond our knees in front of our lawn. And it was a once hard surface. Our children learned to swim in that lake. My grandchildren will not swim in our lake. They won't have anything to do with it. So I say, can you at least do something to stop this runoff from destroying our property? My final question is it asking too much to have you right or wrong? I don't know what your options are, but destroying a homeowner's property can't be one of them. And I thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you.
And I might add that I did get a note from Mark here last fall. The village was out, the Watershed District was out. I was so optimistic, I was so excited, because I thought, you know what, we're going to get our problem resolved. And then I got a letter saying no. Now, I don't want us to talk about the fact that you don't have the money. That's the story we've gotten time and time and time again. We don't have the money. Well, in 28 years, wouldn't you think you would have found a way to make our project work? And so anyway, what Mark said is, all that being said, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District indicated this is likely a project that they would cost share with the city, as well as a number of other projects. Staff is preparing a list of drainage improvement projects that will be presented to City Council in the near future for prioritization and funding discussions. At this point in time, we cannot identify a timeline for addressing your drainage concerns. We would be happy to follow up with you following these discussions. It's been 7 months. There's been no follow-up. I don't know what your discussions have been. I don't know if you've even had any discussions. But I would certainly like an answer. And I think as a taxpayer that has paid taxes since 1948, I deserve an answer. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Ms. Hoffman, and I guarantee we are taking it seriously, and we are going to have to get our engineering company involved, and unfortunately the Watershed, because we can't do project without their approval, and hopefully we can cost share with it with the Watershed. So I don't know if Mark wants to
I
add a
can
little
certainly
to this.
add a couple of comments as well. For council, if you recall, we did work with the Watershed District on a number of projects, as she kind of highlighted in the email that I had sent her previously. We had met with the Watershed District and really reviewed, I'd say, 8 different properties where we have drainage issues. And
again, as indicated in that email, we did make arrangements for a tour bus and took the council around to each of
Right,
these sites. And I don't
right.
recall if you were there or present when we
No, I
when we walked
wasn't.
the property, but I did
No.
receive authorization from you in advance to go and look at some of these issues, and we did do that. In the Watershed District, they are very supportive, and they will cost share for the improvements. It's a matter of, taking the next step from the city level, what we want to do. I know we didn't, after that work session that we had some conversations, I know, those improvements weren't necessarily budgeted for improvements.
So
this season, but
where are we in the priority line?
Well, actually, I know that I think you've sent out a draft work session discussion again, and that's, the drainage issues are again coming up to another work session here I think it's in the first part of May, if I recall.
Yes, excuse me, yes, Mayor, Council, and to Mr. Erickson's point, we do have work session agenda topics coming up in the next couple of months where this will be further explored. Again, going back to what Mr. Erickson said, and I think we talked to Ms. Hoffman that the council did look at these areas, as Mr. Van Dalen, you mentioned.
Right, you said you took a bus around, you took a look at all these
Yep.
properties. I'm just amazed that there are other properties that are worse than mine, that are actually causing problems, because you know what? Now, because of my husband's incapacity, we are gonna list our house. Do you think we're gonna get full value for our house on 1350 Morning View Drive? When people look out at that lawn? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I do think that you're correct. I think that does rate very highly amongst our drainage issues. We have a lot of them, but I do think that does rate quite highly. I know, in meeting with you, you were kind enough, we started looking for opportunities within the site as well for a drainage pond, and I know you were gracious enough to look at the area that we recommended. I think you were in agreement there that certainly would help us resolve those issues as well. And the Watershed District does have a lot of ideas there. They don't like necessarily to pipe it, like you indicated that first segment.
But it doesn't have to go all the way to the
Right,
lake.
right.
If it could just extend beyond the cottage to make that an area that we could at least mow across and make it look decent instead of having a gully. I don't want to look at gullies anymore.
I do remember your property and I sympathize with you. It's been an ongoing problem, and with the help of the engineer and the city council, maybe we can put this at the top of our priority list.
I would appreciate that, because after 28 years, I would hope something would happen. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I think we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second it.
Had some stuff we need to
Aye.
Ayes?
I,
Any nays? Motion approves.
Mayor, you approved the agenda. I do a couple staff recommendations. I apologize, should have chimed in sooner. We do have one addition that we'd like to recommend to the agenda, so if we could entertain a motion to amend the agenda to include a resolution receiving bids and awarding a contract for lowering drive retaining wall. I'd like to recommend that would be item 6E under business, and then for item 6D, a carryover discussion from the work session regarding the request for the Lyle Park ball field usage. And so that would be item 6D, Mayor and Council. So we would recommend that you amend the agenda to include those three changes. Excuse me, two changes. I'm sorry, two changes. Those two additions.
I so move.
Do I hear a second? And ayes?
Aye.
Aye. So motion approved 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you for the help. I need everything I can get. I think if the council doesn't have a problem, we have special presentations, but we were wondering about, we're thinking about moving the consent agenda ahead of it, just for, we've got the Muellers here, so they don't have to sit through this. Would we take a motion to move the consent agenda ahead?
I so move.
Second it.
And
Aye.
ayes?
Three.
Ayes, 3-0.
You want to distribute these to the appropriate parties?
Okay, and
So that would be for approval, the consent,
Okay.
correct?
we need approval, a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I need to read it?
Hey, you can, madam, sorry. So used to saying that for the last 7 years.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
apologize, Mr. Vanderlinde. So Mayor, if you want to read the 4 items under consent, 4A through 4D.
Approve the March 17th special meeting minutes, approve March 17th regular meeting minutes, approve the 2-year extension to variance for David and Arlene Mueller at Kings Point Road, PID 27-117-24-13-0020, and approve an agreement with Mini Biffs for 1 portable restroom for Lyle Park.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second it.
And do I hear ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our motion approves 3-0. So, and then under special presentations, we have for water treatment RFPs. How do you want to do this, Mike? Just
Correct. If I maybe can, Mayor and Council, just do a brief introduction. So on the agenda this evening, we do have 3 presentations scheduled and alphabetically listed. Bolton and Mink would be 1. Number 2 is MSA Professional Services, and then last, Progressive Consulting Engineers. I believe all representatives are here this evening. Again, just an introduction, Mayor and Council, and for our public, the Council directed staff to seek requests for proposals for a feasibility study related to water treatment plant. The last meeting, we talked about the 4 options to be considered and the 4 options in terms of reviewing pricing and getting costs for details regarding a facility in a central location versus a facility in 2 or more locations, and then having each of those scenarios adding reverse osmosis to that. And so the RFP was reviewed by council. Has a number of suggestions by the council before we sent the RFP out. That has been sent out, and again, we appreciate the opportunity for a number of consulting engineers to review that and submit proposals for you. Council, you do have in your packet proposals from the 3 engineering firms that I've just mentioned. You also have 2 letters of correspondence, one from AE2S and Black & Veatch, who provided information to you that they are not submitting a proposal. And then you do have, as I mentioned, the 3 proposals here this evening. You do have in speaking to the consulting firms for your purview this evening is for them to really introduce themselves, spend about 10 minutes for each firm, really putting a face with the proposal. So give each an opportunity for each of the firms to kind of showcase what they're about, and because they're new firms for us, and so this will give the chance for you to see the information, see a face with the proposals. They will provide some information about their experience, because I think you voiced your opinion about wanting to make sure firms are experienced in water treatment, and so we'd look for them to talk to us about their experience with regard to water treatment facilities. And then from there, Mayor and Council, you have discuss what your next steps will be, and we can talk about that when you're done.
so I think first up is Bolton Mink.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, City staff. Again, my name is Bob Brown with Bolton Mink. I'm the Vice President of our company. We've worked with the city on the value engineering for this project, so most of you are familiar with me, and Seth Peterson is a principal engineer. The same key people that worked on the value engineering will be part of our proposal for doing the feasibility study. So again, our firm has been in Minnesota over 65 years, 350 members. We have a specialty group of over 30 that deal with water and wastewater treatment only there. I've handed out a brief little summary sheet. I thought I'd just highlight those area, and then if any questions, we surely will be glad to answer them. As the city administrator talked about, experience, our project team members provide a broad depth of experience, not in also in water supply, treatment, but also in looking at regulations, emerging contaminants, as well as funding sources. So broad, only in the water treatment, but also the regulations as well as the funding source. Our project team experience in planning, design, construction management, and also we have operations startup staff on our team. We have designed and built over 150 water treatment facilities, including 8 out of the 10 reverse osmosis facilities in Minnesota. Our vast experience in implementing these projects will provide assurance that our costs are realistic and are accurate. I think very important in this stage of the feasibility. Strong project management. I will be the project manager and will ensure that the project is completed on time and within the constraints of the budget we have. And lastly, the work of our value engineering provides us that background information so we can complete the feasibility study in a timely and a very cost-effective manner. So, other than that, I think Bolton and Mink is in opinion, the best choice for the city to continue on with this project, at least from the value engineering standpoint. Any questions? Be glad to answer.
Council?
I don't have any. Bob?
No.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next up, we have MSA Professional Services. Thank you much for that. Thank you.
All right, well, my name is Dave Wurzbo with MSA Professional Services. Thank you for the opportunity this evening. I have with me John Stewart and Ben Zier, engineers with our firm. And to keep things moving along, I'll just keep it, my part kind of short here and turn it over to John and Ben. I know MSA is a new firm for you folks, as Mike mentioned, and we're a firm of about 300 employees. We're in the top 300 firms in the country. We're a full-service firm, so we have about 300 employees. For this type of project, we'll be able to do everything in-house from engineering to architectural. We're an employee-owned firm. I've been with the company about 13 years, and large majority of our work is municipal-based. So this is what we do, is work with municipalities like yourselves, focusing on water and wastewater projects. So feel free to, John gave you a handout there, feel free to check our website out. That's in our proposal as well to learn a little bit more. But I know we don't have a lot of time tonight, so I'll kind of turn it over to John and Ben, and if you have any questions, fire away. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Dave. Mayor, Council, good evening. Pleasure to be back in Minnetrista again. One of the items that I got particularly excited about when I got your RFP was thinking into the past. When I worked for the city of Minnetrista, you had in 1996 an annexation hearing with property owners on the far west side of the city who wanted to go to the city of St. Bonifacius. And you hired MSA at that time to come in and do your analysis of your utilities and your transportation for the municipal board. And we spent 3 days with that board, and we were successful in convincing the municipal board that that property should stay with the city of Minnetrista. And I think we did a pretty darn good job, because you got a really nice development finally on that project, or on that property. We'd like to be able to offer our services to you again, and this time we'd like to talk to you about water treatment. I've spent almost as much time as council has reviewing your tapes and looking at your reports that you've had on this process. And we understand that you perceive this to be a very important project. What we would like to leave you with as a message this evening, though, is that this is a process. It's not just a feasibility study. What you're attempting to do here, we believe, is develop a series of options and cost estimates that you can go to your public users and present to them a range of what their choices are. What will their money buy them from A to B, whether that be reverse osmosis or just filters or however you're going to handle it. And that's a particular area that we believe we have great expertise in. We like to think that we are as much educators as we are engineers. We certainly have the technical competency to do the engineering work, and Van, I hope we'll talk to that after I'm done. I gave you in my presentation what we thought might be important for you to think about in the way of a project example. And on page 7 of this handout, I provide you with some detail of how we accomplished this process rather than just a feasibility study in the city of Brainerd and Baxter. Brainerd and Baxter are arch enemies that go back to the times of cutting down forests and whatever. But they had a wastewater treatment project. It was a $30 million project, and they couldn't go anywhere with it because they couldn't develop a consensus. There was a group in Baxter that wanted 3 wastewater treatment plants, a group in Brainerd that wanted to upgrade their existing plant. With a $30 million project, we wanted to get it right. We did the feasibility study, we did the technical analysis, we came up with a cost estimate. We walked the 2 cities through a public participation process that brought the people in, explained to them what the options would be, what the costs would be, and came to a consensus of the project that they eventually built. And I'd like you to take a look at the last paragraph on page 7. We used 3% of the project contingency. When you put together an estimate, it's typical to put in a 10% contingency. When we were done with that project, we were leaving 7% of the contingency on the table. After bid, we had less than 1% of the bid in change orders. So I think we did a pretty darn good job of bringing the project from conceptualization all the way through construction and maintaining our word for the users and the citizens of Brainerd and Baxter. If I could, just bear with me for a minute. We did take a look at the work that was done in your value engineering. We have done this project many times before, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a project that we did in the city of Mankato. Mankato had an issue with their water treatment plant, and they looked at a whole series of options just as you are doing, and one of which was reverse osmosis. And Ben can talk a little bit later of the technical details, but instead of going with an RO plant, they looked at membrane filtration, which will probably get you to 98% of what the RO plant would do for you, and it has the potential to save you $1.5 million, which would take a big chunk of that doubling of your user rates out. Our cost proposal to you was the highest of the 3 you got. We have 200 hours of time in there to evaluate the project that you have laid out for us to do. We've added these points to ponder, and we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the numbers that we're giving you in the way of costs at the end. So yes, we could have come in and we could have given you a lowball estimate, but I think based upon what I've picked up from your public testimony and your council meetings, you want the right answer up front. And that's not something you do with some desktop review. That's something that requires detail and analysis and consideration of past projects that have been recently bid. Our 200 hours of engineering will do that for you. And I think we're the company that you should hire. I would let Ben stand for questions. We did add things into the proposal that weren't in your RFP. We added filtration and ion exchange as cost estimates that you could consider and you could present to your public. We looked at modeling to make sure. I think you were the person that asked about the size of piping, or was it Ms. Hunt? You were concerned about the transmission line size. That you can only do by modeling, and I don't believe that you've done that modeling.
Yeah, we actually have.
You have you? And you concluded the 8-inch was the correct
No,
size?
I think it was my point that indicated that the sizing probably wasn't appropriate.
Right, right. And we propose to go back and redo that and make sure that it's right. You know, that could be $1 million swing right there in the project cost. We would also like to work with you to develop a public participation plan that would bring the people in and bring everybody up to a common level of understanding. Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry if I've spent more time than I should have. Ben's available for questions, as is David or I.
That's all right.
Thank you.
This is a very important project for us. Thank you. Council, any questions?
Any questions at this time?
Yeah, at this point.
Bob?
No. Thank you.
Staff?
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you
Thank you,
very much.
Council.
Mayor and Council, thank you for your time and this opportunity.
Thank you. And next would be Progressive Consulting Engineers Incorporated.
Not here.
I believe they are.
I think they're coming. Evening. Okay, I think we're ready.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Naeem Qureshi, and I want to thank the opportunity to discuss this project with the council. There is a handout that's going around, and there are some other additional handouts.
Maybe you can send those back.
Oh,
We'll send those back. All right, thank you.
As I speak, I'd like you to kind of flip through this presentation that I have put together. The team that we have put together includes myself as the project manager, and we have Adam Kramer, who's in charge of quality assurance. We have Doug Holmberg here, who's a cost consultant, and Dave Brown, who will be the project engineer. And if you notice, the experience that we have put together is quite substantial. The average experience of the team is about 27 years. I myself have about 45 years of experience in the water supply area. I worked for about 9 years with Minneapolis Waterworks, and so this is very familiar territory for me. Going to the team qualifications, we are specialists in water supply. That's what we do. This is what our bread and butter is. We've designed about 30 water plants. We also conducted studies for 34 water plants in which we go in and fix water plants that don't work and optimize their process. So I come in contact with a lot of operators. So I know what practical things have to be in a plant. We have hands-on experience in operating a membrane plant. Adam Kramer from my staff was the director of Minneapolis Waterworks, and they did a 70 million gallons membrane plant there, and he has practical experience of that. I have published 20 papers in various national and regional publications. I've also worked on 2 manuals for AWWA, This is the manual that I put together. The other one is right here. And then our team member, Doug Holmberg, has got about $8.5 billion of construction experience. So that's what we bring to the table. If you turn to the next page, the issues that you're dealing with, number one is discoloration of the water. And then you want to have some realistic cost estimates for the various options that you're considering now. That includes a gravity system, centralized, decentralized, and pressure versus membrane treatment, which is RO in your case. And then what you want is a realistic cost estimate for doing away with home softening that people are doing. How much benefit there is if you were to not do home softening and do it in a municipal facility. If you go to the next page, I have the chart that shows the water quality data from your wells. And if you look there, your iron and manganese levels are above 1 in several of your wells. Now, you're using polyphosphates for sequestering the iron and manganese. If you look at the manual that is the Bible for the health department and is used throughout the upper Midwest, they do not recommend using polyphosphates for sequestering of iron and manganese if the level of iron and manganese is above 1. I have another idea which may work, which may provide you some immediate relief, and that is to use sodium silicate. And I have got the quotes on the next slide that shows that these are experts from this manual that I'm talking about, and it shows that if the iron and manganese levels are above 2 milligrams per liter, sequestering with sodium silicate is likely to work. So you could have some immediate relief if you were to switch over to sodium silicate. It may be a little bit more expensive than polyphosphates, but it will probably reduce the number of complaints that you get. Second thing you're looking for is capital costs that are realistic. What we plan to do is to contact equipment vendors to get their cost, develop a preliminary layout, develop costs for piping and valving, electrical, mechanical, HVAC, chemical feed system, and water main costs are also important because if you were to connecting the north system with for a centralized treatment plant, if you would connect all the 3 systems, then you'll be constructing water main costs, and those has to be very realistic. And our staff members have worked on the utility design for the light rail transit, so they're very familiar with estimating construction of water main costs. And then the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that there has to be restoration and other miscellaneous costs, site improvements, things like that. When you look, if you turn to the next slide, operation maintenance for iron manganese removal plant has to include process equipment cost, chemicals, personnel, electrical, and miscellaneous. So those are the costs that we will be looking at and developing that. And because we have worked in so many water treatment plants, we have actually Adam has operated a water treatment facility. We can develop very realistic costs for operation and maintenance. Now look, you go to the next one, talking about the membrane. Now you need to replace the membrane every 5 to 7 years because the membrane gets fouled, so they won't work. So what you do is if you look at the picture, there's within that circle there's a module. You have to pull the module out, put new ones in, so that's a substantial cost. You need to test the integrity of the the membrane periodically, so that's the cost. You have to do capacity monitoring, looking at the transmembrane pressures and testing. You need to backwash, there's some backwash water that has to be either recycled or disposed. And periodically, you have to clean the membranes. So there's chemical cleaning that has to happen. So there's some costs there also. And then, last but not the least, you have maintenance of the valves and the control system. So all of those costs, when you look in the O&M, have to be included in the costs that you develop. Now, as I mentioned before, we have Doug Homburg, who has worked on about $8.5 billion worth of construction, and he'll be here in a minute to talk a little bit more about that. What we want to do is we want to normalize the cost. We want to develop realistic cost. And how we do that is to review the bids for the last 5 years for similar sized plants. Get an idea where they are. We also would go and contact some of the similar plants that have similar water quality, because as the water quality changes, the chemical costs also change. So we want to look at plants that have similar water quality so we can get some realistic cost information from them. And then we also would evaluate some of the similar, do the same thing for evaluating similar membrane plants. And we would rely on Adam Kramer's experience in running a membrane facility. He actually operated the facility. He understands the total cost picture. And we can't do this alone. We are going to need input from the city staff, because they are the ones that are most familiar with how much it's going to cost for easements, how much it's going to cost for restoration expenses. What are some of those? And we will have to get input from the city staff so that we can develop some really good cost estimates as we move forward.
My name's Doug. The easiest part will be to project what the cost will be for the hard construction. And we'll have as good a number as anybody can produce at this stage of your design. The most challenging part is going to be to predict the bid market, and it's changing rapidly. There'll be a shortage of trades this summer, going into next year, and government-funded or public works projects will more than likely see the biggest increase in costs, because there's more private work that's being bid right now. There'll be a lot more of it next year. And so the bidders that are bidding projects will go after the privately funded work first before they go after publicly funded projects. So that'll be a moving target. We'll talk about a lot, but that'll be the most challenging part of our estimating process. So just want you to be aware of that. Things are going up and pretty quickly.
Thank you, Doug. What the end result is going to be that we will be able to provide you with realistic cost, capital and operation maintenance cost as we move forward. So you can make up you can have an informed decisions in which direction you want to go with the water plant. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions?
I have a question about the membrane plant. How much money is involved and time involved with the chemical cleaning of the membrane?
It depends on your water quality, and you probably can do it every month, once a month.
Every month?
Once a month, yeah. Once a month, 2 months. Depends on how quickly your membrane get fouled up.
And how much is an average cost for this?
It's hard to say because I don't have experience in, but it's not something that is not insignificant.
It's, pardon what?
It's significant cost. I don't know the numbers off my top.
It is a significant cost?
It's significant cost. So those are some of the things that you have to kind of deal with. And that's something that we will develop as we move forward with this project. I don't have the answer right now.
Okay.
Bob, anything? Staff?
Yes, sir.
Well, I sure appreciate you bringing your proposal, and we will let you know.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
do a really good job for you. I can guarantee it. That's a fact. Thank you
Okay.
very much. You really will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So council, what do we want to do? Do we want to discussion on it? Do we want to study it a little bit, table it?
I would, I'd prefer to have a little more time to discuss it.
Okay.
I agree.
I mean, I think the presentation of the three were very good, but there's
Yes.
still, from their past experience, we still, and we never have had, really any numbers.
Do we want to call a special meeting for it, or we want to move it to our next meeting, which should be, what, the 21st?
That is correct, April 21st, our next meeting.
You know, I think one of the things that we found here is there's been a misconception, because it is a very complex situation, it's very complex, and therefore, there have been articles written in the paper. There have been, just as well as in the last meeting, when the numbers were presented at the last meeting, you know, we don't know what the numbers are going to be. And I have a problem with the fact that we're sharing things, which is good to share, but we're sharing information that is not accurate.
Right.
I mean, it's a guess, and that concerns me. It concerns me because of what's getting written on paper. It's concerning what people are reading. It concerns me with how they're perceiving that. But yet, the numbers that we're talking about, they're guesses.
Right.
And that bothers me.
Right. And this will, we'll put that to rest. We will have numbers, we will have hard
Yes.
numbers, we will know where we're at.
And then we can go back and we can say, it's not going to be $4 million more to have reverse osmosis. How can we say that? We don't know.
Right.
You know, so then we can have some confirmed numbers. So I'd like to not talk about it until we have something legitimate, real, that we can share, that we can live up to. I think the last presentation was very, very good. In fact,
Yeah.
you know, there's too many open questions, it's too complex.
Right.
And I just, you know, I know there's controversy about the last meeting with the numbers that were presented, but they're meaningless.
All right, so that's why we have to pick
I
one
think
of these.
that's why we need to go ahead forth and determine what those numbers will be. So the question is we have three presentations tonight. Of the three presentations, which one do we go with? Which one do we move forward? I don't know at this point. Do you know at this point what the cost, do we have an idea what the cost would be for them to put each one of these, to put that number together? Or maybe I'm missing something. Do we have a cost of what it would be to put
Yeah.
that presentation or put those numbers together?
We, Mayor, if I could,
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I could, David, could you, could I have the remote, or could I grab it from you? Is our overhead up and running here?
I may have missed something here, but I feel more comfortable having something more, you know, accurate numbers. If we have that to go, then let's move forward. Let's get going.
Yeah, I think we have those numbers.
Okay, that would be great.
In the-
So let's, I didn't see that or interpret those.
Oh, gosh, I can't see this very well.
We have 3 companies here that have experience from what it looks like and what it appears to have, that have experience in what we're looking for. They've done some cities, both gravity, reverse osmosis. So we've got somebody that we're dealing with now that has some experience, and I'm happy about that. So now let's move forward.
All right, so here we go. So Mayor and Council, with all the proposals that have been submitted to you, they did have cost summaries included with their information, so you can find these on the various pages contained within your packet. What I've done up here is summarize for you an overview of the submittals that you received this evening. Okay, you received 3 of them. The first one from Bolton and Mink. In their proposal, they had a cost of $16,900. They are crediting the city $7,500.
Value study.
The monies that we spent to Bolton and Mink for the value engineering study, so their cost is $9,490. They've estimated in their proposal estimated hours in this project of 153 hours. So in performing, the math on that, $9,490 and 153 hours being spent on this project, their cost is $62 per hour at this price. The non-discounted price, they're at $110 an hour, just
So
for
in this
reference.
position, correct me, Mike, but in this position here that we're looking at, because of the days and the hours that have been spent on the value engineering study, they're crediting back $7,500, which, so they've already done a lot of work, correct? I mean, there's already a lot of work put into it, in the value engineer study.
They have, I guess, according to the proposal they've given us, they're estimating putting in 153 hours on this project. Okay. In addition to what they've already put in.
Yeah, but in reality, they're crediting back $7,500 from the value
Correct.
engineer.
That is correct. Okay, that is correct. MSA in their proposal provided us a cost of $22,600. You heard in their presentation they would be spending more time, and I think they even referenced in their presentation 200 hours being estimated for this project. That cost is $113 per hour, breaking it down into an hourly rate. The last presenter, PCE, estimated, or their proposal was $12,420. They estimated 108 hours for this project, and that hourly rate is $115 per hour. So really all 3 firms, in terms of really an hourly rate, they're all very close. It's just a matter how many hours they estimate to put into the project.
One thing I should have asked, and I didn't see that either, and I apologize for that. I have not had the opportunity to review it as close as I probably should have. The other thing I would like to address is timing. Is there anything said about how quickly this can be put together so we can get back to our residents in terms of timing and get back to them with real numbers that we can believe and real numbers that mean something? Timing?
Yeah, let's see, I want to pull it up here. What we indicated in our RFP is that no matter the consultant chosen, that they would need to deliver their draft report, to the city council either at the May 5th or May 19th council meeting. So the
Then I
turnaround
would
was
agree,
pretty
Mark, if we can move forward, I think maybe I would be in favor of moving forward. Let's keep going.
Okay. I'm gonna need
I would make a motion to have Bolton and Mink do the project due to the fact that they have so much time involved in it anyway, and I think they're the firm to pick.
your second.
I'm gonna second that. Yes, I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay, and I say aye. Motion approved, 3-0. And we will be having Bolton Mink as our engineering firm to give some cost estimates.
Correct, and so Mayor and Council, based on your action this evening, staff will communicate with Bolton and Mink, and we'll begin the process immediately.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we done the consent agenda. we move on to, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Wallace property, right?
Correct, Mayor,
Yeah.
Council, item 6A, if I can, Madam, or, the 7 years
Yeah,
of saying
yeah,
Madam
no,
Mayor, I
that's-
apologize.
I might take that as a compliment, I'm not sure.
It tells you how often the mayor's been absent.
Right.
With that, Mayor and Council, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Abel for a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk, Mayor and members of the council. There are 3 parts of this application. It is the development of the properties located at 950 County Road 110 North. The current zoning is R2, low, medium residential. There is only one address, but there are 2 separate PIDs and 2 separate pieces of property that we're looking at this evening. The first application is a zoning amendment application from D.R. Horton to adopt ordinance 418 that would rezone the properties from its R2 to a PUD, which stands for Plan Unit Development. The second being a preliminary plat application from D.R. Horton that would develop 22 single-family lots on the site. The third application has been made but will not be discussed tonight. It is an annual dock license application from D.R. Horton for 10 dock slips. This item was tabled at the Planning Commission meeting. There has been dual applications made, one made to the city of Minnetrista, one made to the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District. The LMCD had not acted on the application prior to the Planning Commission meeting. Therefore, the Planning Commission opened that public hearing and continued it for another month to allow LMCD to review their application and in case the dock plan could change, which it did slightly get altered, and that'll be brought back to the Planning Commission on April 28th, where they'll continue their hearing, make a recommendation then to council, and you'd see that at your May 5th city council meeting. So we're really looking at 2 parts of this 3-part application this evening. So this is the location map. Again, 950 County Road 110, located just south of West Branch Road. You can see from the 2 boundaries there, there's the larger piece to the north and then the long, narrow strip to the south being the second property that we're looking at. A little bit of history on the piece of property. In 2006, the city did amend its 1998 comprehensive plan. That amendment guaranteed that Minnetrista would conform to its regional wastewater system commitments. You can see number 21 on the chart here is the Wallace property. The unit number called out was 16 units on a net acres of 7.8 with a density range of 2 to 3 units per acre. So this is a chart directly from our comprehensive plan. This is a map insert from the comprehensive plan. You can see here the property at 7.8 acres with a minimum unit number of 16. And that unit number is specific, as I said earlier, there's 2 separate pieces of property that is specific to the northern larger piece of property. And you can see why when I get to the site data with that. Again, looking at 7.8 acres called out in the comp plan. So this is the existing conditions. There's an access off of County Road 110 with a driveway that goes to the family's home that's on the site that is still there. You can see there's a couple of wetlands associated with the property. There is a city-owned tax forfeited property directly to the east, which abuts Painters Creek and Jennings Bay, is located down here just to the south and east. This is their proposed preliminary plat. It shows 22 single-family lots. You can see the access point off of County Road 110 would be slightly shifted. It would directly line with Kramer Road, which is adjacent on the other side of 110 with Painters Creek. This has been sent to Hennepin County for review. Their comments are provided as part of your packet this evening. Street A comes in with a cul-de-sac, and then Street B does have connectivity to the Ridgewood Cove neighborhood just to the south, and they have access here up to County Road 110. So getting to some of that site data, and here's where I'm pointing out that difference from the comprehensive plan at 7.8 acres. You have 13.3 acres gross of the two pieces of property together. Again, that guided density is 2.0 to 3.0 units per acre. The current zone density at R2 is 2.0 to 3.5 units per acre. When we subtract out the wetlands, the wetland buffers, there is some additional right-of-way being taken for County Road 110. That brings you down to that 10.4 net developable area. At the 22 lots, they're at 2.12 units per acre. The minimum guided units is 21, and the maximum guided then is 31 units, and again, their proposal is at 22. As with some of our developments, we do talk about density and how that looks with the surrounding neighborhoods. One of the most recent in that neighborhood or that area is the Painters Creek Preserve development directly west. The gross acres on that is 29 acres. There was a total of 47 single-family units that were approved there. Taking out wetlands, wetland buffers, right-of-way, you get a net acreage of 26. And the density then that was approved was 1.8 units per acre. That was back in the late 90s. Similar to the request this evening, the property was rezoned to a PUD, a plan unit development. The reason for that was to deviate from the minimum lot size at that time. It was 23,000 square feet. They went down to 15,000 square foot lots for Painters Creek Preserve. So there's one of the most recent neighborhoods in a comparison from a density standpoint as to what's around that area. Looking at our parks, trails, and open space plan, this is a snapshot directly out of our park plan. You can see there is an existing park, Friendship Park, which is part of the Painters Creek neighborhood. The area directly to the south, we did recently receive a donation of the Gillespie property, which falls within that search corridor to the south. So you do have two parks in the vicinity. Ultimately, the Parks Commission voted to recommend that the City Council consider the park, the cash in lieu of land for the park dedication as part of this. Given the fact that Friendship Park is across the street, it is a mini park. It does have a service area of a quarter mile. It covers a majority of this development. So that was the recommendation the Parks Commission gave. The council may recall this was the concept sketch plan that was reviewed last year with Parks Commission, Planning Commission, and City Council. You can see that they did have still this access point off County Road 110, but there was two proposed cul-de-sacs and two lots down off of Ridgewood Cove at 22 total lots. This then a color copy of their proposed preliminary plat. You can see again the access point showing a center island which would conform with what's across the street at Kramer Road. One cul-de-sac now and then a connecting street down to Ridgewood Cove. And specifically there was concerns with lots 21 and 22 that were part of the concept plan. Residents of Ridgewood Cove as well as council asked the developer to consider removing those lots off of Ridgewood Cove. Council also asked the applicant to consider an additional egress for the site, hence how you get to the proposal that they're showing this evening with that additional connection from an access standpoint. So an overview of the Planning Commission's recommendations. We did hold 3 different public hearings at their March meeting. The ordinance 418 to rezone to a PUD, that was approved on a 5-0 vote. The preliminary plat for 22 lots, there was a 3-2 vote, and that vote had 2 conditions that were added as part of that. One being to consolidate lots 4 through 7 on the south side of the property to reduce hard cover of the development and provide a better transition to the existing neighborhood. The second condition being to remove the island in that cul-de-sac for maintenance and emergency access purposes. So those were the 2 conditions added to that motion made that was a 3-2 vote. Just to note that the 2 no votes, it was stated for the record the reason they voted no was they were okay with the plan as proposed. That was called out for the record and as part of the minutes, but that was a 3-2 vote with those 2 conditions. As I mentioned earlier, the public hearing was continued on that dock application, so they did not receive comment. They opened the hearing and continued it until April 28th. Specifically with the lot consolidations, what they're talking about here is, you can see in the red circle, lots 4, 5, 6, and 7. What the discussions was eliminating one of those lots, and just let me state, one of the areas that was brought up was the hardcover. The hardcover is being met on the site. They are meeting the hardcover requirements in the Shoreland Overlay District as well as outside the Shoreland Overlay District. You need a minimum of 50% of open space in the Shoreland Overlay District. They're at 80% of open space. The Shoreland Overlay District is the property that's more towards the north. Property outside of that district, maximum hardcover is 35%. They are showing that they can meet that hardcover requirement as part of that. So just one thing of note in terms of the hardcover comment that was brought up with the Planning Commission. As far as public record, there was one written comment in your packet from resident Julie Johnson at Ridgewood Cove. Today, 3 additional emails were received and distributed to you this evening and included as part of the packet. Those emails, 2 from Ridgewood Cove residents. So just wanted to make note of those for the record, that those are the written comments that were received. Again, the dock application will come back to you in May. So what we're looking at this evening is an ordinance to rezone to a PUD, and the second being the preliminary plat applications for the plan that's being presented as 22 single-family lots. Mike Sewell with D.R. Horton is in the audience if you'd like to ask him any questions or entertain a presentation from him, and staff will also be available for questions.
Council, I'd like to, Mike, would you like to say a few words?
Good evening. I'm Mike Sewell with D.R. Horton Homes. Thank you for listening to us tonight. I think staff has done a good job of presenting the history and the issues that were before us when we started down this path, last fall, last winter. You've seen what we've done to our plan based on the comments we received from staff and Planning Commission and City Council. And I think it's a good plan. We're still working on it. Just lately we've made an improvement to our plan where we pushed the tree line from 5 to 10 feet off the south property line, the Ridgewood Cove line, to 20 feet out as a minimum, and average is 40 feet. We're okay with all the conditions, except we just don't understand the number 18 where they take out one lot, because we meet the hardcover actually in the shoreland ordinances area. We add over 80%, and the ordinance is 50, so we've done really well there, and the rest of our lots will make the 35. So from a hardcover, we don't understand what the Planning Commission was trying to do there, but we can live with the rest of them. But I'd be more than happy to answer or go into more details if you have questions on the changes we've made or anything about our project.
So you're definitely talking about 22 parcels?
Correct. We'd
rather
like to-
than 21?
We still would like to get approval for 22. That'd be our goal.
Okay, so that's where we're at, is 22, okay. Bob, any questions?
One of the things you were mentioning earlier that has been postponed or tabled until the 28th of April. Could you recap that again for me, please? The 28th of April, there's going to be another meeting pertaining to the docks, right?
That's correct.
That I would think that's important to you.
It's important to us, and just to update council, we did get approval the other night at the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District. We're actually going Wednesday night for our final approval on finding the facts, but they did vote to approve our dock location. So we did make it through that step now. Now we'll come back through the Planning Commission and work through the city's process on the docks, but we did get approval from the Lake District the other night.
So that's on the 28th, back to the planning. Okay.
Correct.
So you're already, that's very important to you.
Yeah.
You're on the right track.
We're heading in the right direction.
All right. That's all.
That's it? Well, thank you. We've got a resident that wanted to speak about this, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Could you just state your name and address, please?
Chris Johnson, 5520 Ridgewood Cove, and I'm president of the Ridgewood Cove Property Owners Association also. I have a summary of my comments if. I've spoken to this body and some of the others before, but I do want to just to go back and provide a little bit of context to our comments. First, very much appreciate our neighbors, the Wallaces, and respect the development that is going to be important to them as they move forward with their life, and appreciate the work with D.R. Horton also. One of the things that occurred as David mentioned several years ago was a change in the comprehensive plan that was really driven by the Metropolitan Council's requirements around the sewage situation. And that really defined a significant number of homes or lots for this property. And it was done at a time where I think the city was under a lot of pressure, understandably. It was done at a time where the plats, looking at property, identified acreage, but not much else in terms of topography. And now as we're actually at that point of developing a property, we find, I think the Wallaces have found and D.R. Horton has found, that this is a challenging property from topography standpoint in order to develop with that kind of density that's required under the comprehensive plan and the zoning. And so we want to have that as the context of saying this is really a very high density for an area that maybe wasn't suited for that. And so are there any things that can be done about that? At the time of that comprehensive plan, several of us were present, and the city council at that time, many of our questions were about, but now we're talking about having neighborhoods that are dissimilar, very close to each other and dissimilar in terms of density. And that is what we find at the present time. And so the proposed lot sizes on Orchard Cove range from 8,800 to I think 15,800 square feet. The lot sizes in the immediate adjacent Ridgewood Cove lots are 34,000 square feet. So anywhere from a little more than 2 to 4 times as many homes on a lot as in Ridgewood Cove. Also, as we look at the Painters Creek property, which is immediately to the west over 110, the lot sizes there range from what David had mentioned, the minimum 15,000, which would be about the maximum in the Orchard Cove property, up to 47,000 for some of the properties there too. So I mentioned those numbers really just to highlight the difference of density in very similar or very closely approximate neighborhoods there. And so as we think about the commitment that we heard from the city council of saying the city really values buffering, finding ways of buffering transitions in neighborhoods, that is something that we have hoped for and relied on as we knew that someday this property would be developed. And this strip of land that's on the south part of the Wallace property is a densely wooded property and kind of the ideal sort of buffer. What has been necessary, and the developer has worked very hard, Mike and his team worked very hard to try to figure out how to put 22 homes in to this property that is a challenge to do it. But as a result, over at least half of the homes are right up against Ridgewood Cove. And so that concept of we want to buffer and transition neighborhoods is really challenged because of this requirement for 21 or 22 homes as requested. Similarly, there's really a huge difference of elevation between the Ridgewood Cove and the Orchard Cove, and that's resulted in order to be able to do the development with the proposed number, the need to pretty much, and I regret the word, but clear cut the trees in all of the area where you see as light green. And much of the area where the homes along the south are is wooded currently. So I very much respect D.R. Horton's desire to save trees, but the reality is to try to do it with this density of homes has not been possible. And because of that significant elevation difference, to level out, to grade and level out that property, a significant retaining wall is necessary. And at its peak, it's almost 12 feet tall to try to create the difference between, or to resolve the difference between where the Orchard Cove homes will be built and where the area is above. Now, I bring this up not to say that this isn't, the general plan of where things should be. It would be great if the homes could be more in the north, yes, but that may not be possible. But I bring this up just as really context to say we've all kind of been pushed into a situation of more lot development here than is appropriate for this property. And so one of the things that we ask as we go forward is for the City Council to consider and hopefully approve the Planning Commission's recommendation that would reduce the number of homes by one in that most southern border with Ridgewood Cove, in an attempt to try to make that transition in terms of lot size more compatible, more consistent, more similar in that location. And noting that the setback side setback is only potentially 15 feet between homes, I think you can imagine that's the distance, between us. And thinking about homes that close together compared to a neighborhood where the average lot size is about 0.8 acres, a significant difference. So one thing we do ask is that you approve the recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding this. Trees we mentioned, and I mentioned the fact that so many trees are removed. One of the things we've been in continuing dialogue with Mike about is the trees right behind the properties on the north side of Ridgewood Cove, and the fact that many of those trees, even on our properties, would be potentially endangered by the need to put in a boulder wall and then the cutting back and supporting that wall from the backside. And we were concerned because the preliminary plat drawing that we had seen did show in one area that the clear cutting would come within 5 to 8 feet of the property lines with Ridgewood Cove, which would certainly risk the trees in Ridgewood Cove. I am pleased to report tonight, in talking with Mike ahead of time, that they've revised their plan around that location in that area of the boulder wall and the clear cutting of the trees to provide that. And so now that we have a 20-foot buffer there. So we appreciate and thank you for that and working in that regard. The other area of concern where Ridgewood Cove is impacted by the development is the new road, Road B, that's going to enter onto Ridgewood Cove. And we've expressed our concern to the Planning Commission on that. Our concern is that is going to be a junction where cars are going to be heading down a hill and taking a left-hand turn to get onto that road. And at the same time, cars from Ridgewood Cove are going to be coming up and around a blind curve right at about that same spot. So we have safety concerns about that location of the road, and we asked the council to think about ways with us that could be mitigated. Some of the things that we've thought of would be considering that road to be an emergency access road with more of a walking path instead of a through road to resolve the emergency access concern. One of the other ways we've thought about it is considering it as a one-way to reduce the traffic, or at least to limit the traffic that might be coming down and making that left-hand turn. We did learn at the Planning Commission that there is plans for a stop sign as that road egresses onto Ridgewood Cove. We appreciate that, think that's very important, but we do have concern for the school children and others that walk in that area and also enter or wait for the bus up at the top of Ridgewood Cove. And the fourth area that has potential significant impact for Ridgewood Cove is the area of the docks, which we're not really discussing tonight, but I just want to acknowledge that and say that we are pleased to report that we've been working collaboratively with the developer, and we have a mutually supportive plan for the dock size and location in this region. And so at a future meeting, we will be coming back to the city, looking for your support in terms of those dock applications also. We do have some, I want to mention, we do have some residents along Ridgewood Cove and along the channel that runs out there that have expressed concern about, with the additional amount of boats, will there be some more dredging needed or silting in or things like that. And we continue to work with Mike and D.R. Horton to develop ideas and solutions for water depth and concerns about silting or the need for dredging. So those are the four areas that I mentioned. The density, a significant difference can be the residents of Ridgewood Cove by having one fewer home in that 4 to 7 home region. The continued concern about and follow through on the preservation of trees as the development would occur. Consideration of what can be done to create safety around the new road coming in there, and then the future work as we go forward with the docks and other aspects around that. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council? Arlene?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I would, I still like the idea of 21 homes rather than 22 in that space.
Does that, David, does that mess up our density?
It probably does.
Mayor and members of council, I'll go back to my overview of the site. So it's guided for 2.0 to 3.0 units per acre. The zone density is 2.0 to 3.5. Where they're at currently with 22 units is 2.12 units per acre. The minimum guided units is 21. The maximum is 31.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's 22. But we could get by, we could get by with 21. 21 is acceptable.
Mayor and members of council, they've fallen in the requirement of the density. They've fallen within that. You would need to look to the plat
Okay.
and discuss what would need to be changed with their plat in order to change their configuration.
Well, I guess I would make a motion to adopt the ordinance 418 with reservations.
We have a second?
Aye.
Did you second it?
No, she seconded it. You seconded it, right?
Oh,
Oh, second it. I'm sorry.
okay, okay. And ayes?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approves 3-0. Now,
And Mr. Mayor and members of council, because we only have 3 council members here tonight, the next item was a resolution that authorized publication of ordinance 418 by title and summary. That requires a 4/5 vote of city council to actually adopt that resolution, with which actually publicizes it in the paper. So no action is required or needs to be taken on that tonight. We would simply bring that back on a future agenda, likely under consent. for adoption by, when we have at least 4 city council members here. And then what that does is we authorize and publish that in the local newspaper to make official notice that this property is going to be rezoned from R2 to plan unit development. So it would be suggested to not act on that item tonight, and we'll bring that back for a future agenda. The next item for your consideration is the resolution for preliminary plat.
So that would be something that you would recommend for the 21st, the meeting for April 21st?
We certainly could bring it back on the 21st, yes.
Okay, preliminary plat. Any comments, concerns, motions?
We would need a motion to.
To approve the preliminary plat
Approve the preliminary
for,
plat.
22 single-family lots.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor and Council, starting on page 185 of your packet is the resolution itself that has been recommended by staff based on conversations of the Planning and Park Commission. So on page 185 is the resolution outlining the conditions that Mr. Abel has talked about.
Okay. I take it I can make a motion on this, right?
Who's it, Mr. Mayor?
Anyway, I make a motion to approve preliminary plat for D.R. Horton with the, what do we got, 17?
That is correct. There's 17 conditions listed in the resolution.
17 conditions by staff.
I'll second
Here, ayes?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved 3-0. And I think the next is the feasibility study for the trunk water main from Maple Crest along County Road 151 and County Road 19 for Red Oak Development. And that would be for Mark, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you're aware, we have a preliminary plat approved for the Red Oak development. As part of that, they do require municipal services such as sewer and water. Sewer is readily available to the site, however, water main is not. As you may recall, in 2007, the city of Minnetrista undertook a project to extend water main along 151 to the Maple Crest area. That is where the water main exists today, is at the intersection of Maple Crest and County Road 151. To provide water service to the development, we're looking at extending water main from the Maple Crest intersection with 151 all the way to County Road 19, and from County Road 19 to the golf course property, which is almost 1 mile. And so with that, previously staff had worked with the development team on a reimbursement agreement for these types of services to bring municipal services to the development. And so the development or the reimbursement agreement identifies that the developer is responsible for 100% of the cost associated with the development of the feasibility study, as well as the next item that we talk about on the agenda. And so with that, the developer has reviewed the proposal as well, and it's less than, the next 2 items are less than what they had budgeted, and so they're pleased with the costs associated with the preparation of these documents. Again, they are reimbursed 100%. It is actually a little bit less than what's been identified in the reimbursement agreement. And so with that, staff is recommending moving forward with the preparation of the feasibility study as outlined in the detailed scope of services. And I stand for any questions that you may have. If you'd like me to go through details of the scope of services, I certainly can do that as well.
I guess, is there anybody here from, still, have they all left? From the developer?
This is a different development, so that this is for the
Okay,
Red Oak. That
okay,
was
here's a concern that I have is we're basically spending their money,
Right.
not ours. We're spending their money. So you say you have an agreement from them? Is that part in here?
The city has a reimbursement agreement that had been previously approved by the city council in February of this year. And so that document is not in here. It's dated February 27th.
I was just saying, if the developer, since the developer's paying for it, he should agree to the dollar amount or.
And he has.
other
They have.
estimates, if he needed other
Yeah,
estimates.
we did provide that to the development team, and they did approve that. As you can see in the schedule as well, it's a very tight time frame. If you see, for them, they want to get models in this fall and have things up and operational. And so if you look to the schedule, you know, the project likely won't be constructed because it needs to go through this 429 process, where they would be assessed for the proposed improvements. You know, substantial completion is September, October timeframe if we kind of fast track it, if you will. And so they're anxious to get things moving forward. But again, they have been provided with both of the proposals, both Tracy Rust and Mark, I forget his name, but both have reviewed and provided us information.
Were there any more than one estimate on this, or were there more than one estimate?
No, there was just
Just
from your city
from
engineer,
WSP.
WSP, correct.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just, council, if I could explain, Mark has outlined it correctly. Council has already approved a reimbursement agreement. You did that about a month ago. Normally, if this project matures into a 429 project, which I think everybody expects, whatever the soft cost would turn out to be would become part of the project cost in the normal course of events, and all of that would get assessed back to the property owner. 100% of the cost of this is proposed to be assessed. So soft cost and hard cost would be assessed back. In this case, out of an abundance of caution, what we did was come up, as Mark said, with a reimbursement agreement which the developer has signed, which the council has authorized. So it is in place. It's recorded against the property, whereby the developer agrees to pay 100% of the soft cost, even if the project falls apart. So in other words, if the engineering work is done to extend the water main, and for whatever reason the project does not go forward as a 429 project, and therefore there's nothing to assess, nonetheless, the city won't be out any money because those engineering costs will be paid by the developer. And that's true with regard to this item, and as Mark said, it's also true with regard to the next item on your agenda. So the city is at no risk for any of these costs, regardless of whether this matures into a 429 project.
So, what do we,
Well, my concern was that we just didn't ram it down our throat, that we had a price and we agreed upon the price.
right, as long as they agree to it.
Yeah,
I mean,
then I'm fine.
Then I'm okay with
They
it,
agreed to the price,
yeah.
and then I'm fine. I mean, I just don't wanna agree to something if it's a surprise to them, I mean,
Right.
it's a surprise.
That's understandable,
So,
so.
based
Okay.
on that,
We need a motion then?
based on the fact that they have seen and agreed upon the price, I would make a motion to approve.
To approve the feasibility study
Yes.
for the public improvements to
For
extend
Red Oaks.
for Red Oaks. Okay. I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Everyone said aye?
Aye.
Aye. Nays, obviously none. Motion passes 3-0. Next on the agenda is, what do we got? Approve and design for a Red Oak lift station, and that's also Mark, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Again, this is an item that I'd like to just give a little bit of background on this. The property in question here with the Red Oak development cannot be served traditionally by gravity methods. The sanitary sewer is an elevation higher than what their properties can be served, and so a lift station is required to provide sanitary sewer service lifting to our other sanitary sewer. This is not a requirement that the developer utilize the city to design this facility. We give that as an option. There's a lot of components with the lift station that we do require consistency with our other lift stations. As you know, we've recently are upgrading our SCADA system. What they design is required to be compatible with what we have. We want, the similar pumps, control panels, components, rails, site access, SCADA. And so the developer's engineer does not have that expertise. We have done this before in the past as well with Palmer Point, where the developer has asked the city to design, provide the design services for the lift station. And so upon their request, we've provided that scope of services here for them as well. To Mr. Christian's point, that has been provided to the developer for their review. Again, it's less than what they had budgeted for, so they're pleased and ready to move forward with that to include in their bid package when they bid out their proposed improvements. Again, that is also identified in the reimbursement agreement that the City Council had previously approved as well. And so with that, staff is recommending moving forward with the final design and plans and specifications for the Red Oak Lift Station, again, to be reimbursed 100% by the development team.
Any questions, council?
As with the other one, I would make a motion to go ahead and approve it under the condition that they have seen it and have agreed to the price.
I second it.
We have a second, and we hear ayes?
Aye.
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 Nays? No? Motion passes 3-0. Okay. We have next in line, item D would be the ball fields. That was a request from Waconia Ed to use the ball field at Hunter's Crest, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
And who wants to take that one on?
We just have, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, is to have Mr. Abel kind of recap the conversation from the work session and then as to why this issue was brought forward to the regular meeting for your consideration. Mr. Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Funk, Mayor and members of council. We did receive a request from the Waconia Community Ed and Rec Department. What they're looking for is permission to use our ball field and open green space area in Lyle Park, which is located in the Hunter's Crest neighborhood in the southwestern portion of the city. That neighborhood, as well as that portion of our city, does fall within the Waconia School District. So there are plenty of Minnetrista residents who utilize the Waconia School District and also utilize the District 112 youth sports activities. What they're looking for is use of the ball field for youth sports for softball and baseball, t-ball activities, and also the open space that's located in that park for soccer program. The programs would run through April through May. They play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The league is 3-year-olds to second graders. And they're in need of more green space. The program is growing. They do utilize space with the city of Waconia and the city of St. Bonnie, but as their program gets more popular and expands, they're looking for more space. So what looking for from council tonight would be permission for the Waconia Community Ed to use Lyle Park for their youth activities as outlined in the email that's part of your special meeting packet this evening.
I make a motion to approve the use of Waconia special youth program for the use of Lyle Park.
I'll second it.
And ayes?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0, passes. Anything else with that? We just got item E, which would be Loring Wall. And I take it that's Mark?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you may recall, last fall, we did bid the retaining wall project, and staff and council felt that the bids received were higher than we would have liked to have seen. And so recently here, we did rebid the project. We did receive 8 bids on March 25th, and we have those tabulated. The bids range for the large block retaining wall from $146,000 roughly to $246,000, with the engineer's estimate at $165,000. The boulder wall, the bids range from $88,000 roughly to $254,000, with the engineer's estimate at $129,000. Staff feels there's tremendous value with the boulder retaining wall at $88,000. I'll say it exactly here, $87,998.72. And so staff is recommending award to RJ Valek in the amount of $87,998.72. If staff or if council is so inclined to award a contract, staff will immediately follow up with a letter to the neighborhood there and inform them. I know they've been anxious for these improvements to take place. We would notify them of the pending improvements, and the schedule is I believe I have contacted Mr. Valek, and he's looking to start as soon as road restrictions are lifted.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Council?
I would make a motion to accept the bid and for the contract for the retaining wall on Lorraine Drive
I'll
to
second.
RJ Valek.
I'll second it.
We've got a second, and ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes. So motion carries 3-0. Okay, that's done. I think that's the end of our business items, right?
Correct, Mr. Beer.
Okay, we've got one issue. I think we've all got a copy of it. We've got something from the school district in regards to the land. Do you want to take this, Mike?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council, today I received a letter from Mr. Borg from the West Tonka Superintendent of Schools. Did distribute that letter for your review. So it is addressed to Mayor Fisher and Minnetrista City Council members. Maybe you just want to take a minute to read through it and get a sense for what the school district is requesting, and then after reviewing it, then we'll need to talk about what we should do for a response or next steps. And I think it's a letterhead with today's date on it from the West Tonka Public Schools.
I guess I'm gonna have to comment on this, Mr. Funk. Back in November, when you and I and Mayor Fisher met with Kevin Board, Mr. Botts, we went there after reviewing a couple of different options, and the one option that we reviewed at that time that we went to meet them with was, we have absolutely no problem with providing an SRO officer to pay for what you use, okay? And at that time, you did a lot of research, and you came up with a fair hourly rate to be charged, or for the city to be reimbursed for the amount of the usage. And at that time, at that meeting, after sitting in there for an hour plus, it got tangled up between the SRO agreement and the land, because at that particular time, we were looking at the land being a very important issue. However, it was going to be two separate issues, and everybody at this point in time has always said, these are two separate issues. Well, for some reason, it doesn't appear to be that way. At that time, we agreed that we would kind of finalize things prior to year-end December, year-end 2013. Time proceeded and went on, and nothing happened. We had a motion then on March 1st, or gave them a deadline of March 1st to respond. We did not get a response. However, now they have responded and agreed on March 10th that this would be there. However, in reading in the paper, in the article that Teresa wrote after discussing this with Mr. Borg, it stated in the paper that the land had a value of $51,000 and that there was an expected reciprocal. In other words, we are gonna donate this to you, but there's strings. To me, donations don't have strings, okay? And also at this point in time, we don't even know whether or not we're gonna need the land. There may be a different option, that we may not even need the land. So therefore, I would be opposed at this point in time. If the event happens where we need the land, let's buy it, okay? That would be my opinion, is to let's buy it if in the event we need it, but I don't think we're gonna need it. So therefore, I'm opposed of going forward with this. I'm not opposed to providing an SRO officer under the original discussions that we had way back last November. You want it, we'll provide it, pay for it. Because again, I read in the paper, there's a donation, but it has strings. Donations to me don't have strings. I'm opposed.
Arlene, any comment?
Well, after hearing everything that's been going on with the SRO officer, it's a very necessary position. We do need that position. We need it to help our students out when they're troubled. I have no problem whatsoever with hiring another SRO officer, but I think the school should pay for it. And I think the land is entirely a separate issue, and I agree with Bob. If we need the land, we'll buy it. The heck with it. None of these strings attached to everything that's going on. That's getting a little bit ridiculous.
They also have a price on that land that was stated in the paper also of $51,000. Now you and I, and we all know that that land, to come up and have a value of that of $51,000, that you can't build a house on it, you might be able to build a storage shed on it, might be questionable. That might be questionable. The other concern I have is, as you know, we have approximately 600 kids, correct me if I'm wrong, that live in Hunter's Crest and Turtle Creek that go to Waconia. Do we support their SRO officer? What about Watertown? What about the other kids that don't go to West Tonka? Again, I agree. I think it's important. I think it's important for the kids. I think it's important for the school to have something. But I think they also then should pay for what they use. That's my opinion.
So what do we need to do with this? What are you looking for? Staff got any comment on this? I know we need to change the tape here real quick. Do we want to take a quick break and then continue?
Yeah, maybe we should, Mr. Mayor, just suggest maybe changing the tape here. Looks like we're getting the indication that's probably the thing to do here. So we'll take a recess.
Okay, we'll take a
Take
recess.
a 5-minute recess.
Yep, 5-minute recess. Okay, we were discussing the West Tonka land donation. Being that we have a couple council members, or the mayor and a council member gone, I don't know, I'm just gonna make a suggestion if it would make sense to table this till the next week. They want an answer by the 30th. Table it to our April 21st meeting, and I don't know if it would make sense for, I think, Bob, you said Cheryl and you and Mike had a conversation with the school district.
Initially going all the way back to last year.
Right. If you want to set up another meeting with them, that's up to you. You, Mike, Cheryl can talk about it. Otherwise, we just postpone it till the 21st, and hopefully the full council is.
You know, I would suggest, I would make a motion we postpone it until the 21st. We're only talking 2 more weeks. Now, I know there's a deadline, and I know Chief Falls has a concern also. You want to address a couple things, if you would, go ahead.
Sure, Mayor and members of council. I appreciate you letting me speak quickly on this issue. As you know, we've been talking about the SRO position for some time now, and I won't go over my spiel about how important this position is. I think we're all in agreement that it's very, very valuable, not only to our city, but the entire community. With that, I know there's been a lot of talk about the land and the money, and I think as Councilmember Christians has pointed out tonight, those issues have kind of been melded together. Even though the contract that was before you the SRO contract that was before you at the last council meeting had no mention of the land. That's just regarding the SRO and the dollars provided from the school district for that position. And so with that, my concern is as time goes on, we are growing very close to the end of this year. The last day of school for this school year is May 30th. And so between now and that time period, I have to select a new SRO and then get them trained in prior to the end of the year. And certainly that's the school's concern as well, is that if we can't make that happen, there's all kinds of planning that has to take place. So from my perspective, I really feel like I am under a time crunch to get that to happen. And so certainly my recommendation, as it was at the last council meeting, which was 3 weeks ago now, would be to approve that contract from the school. It's just for 2 years. It was an increase in funds to us of $4,000 per year to cover that position, which then would give us time to address if you'd like to see something done differently in a contract, in future contracts. We certainly could take our time to look at those issues much closer. And I guess I will also mention that our contract, while it's separate with us, they also have a contract with the city of Orono for the schools that are in their jurisdiction. And so those contracts are kind of simultaneous and very similar. And with that said, the amount of dollars that are available have simply been split in half. So Orono gets half and we get half. And so I think even if we were to ask for more money at this time, that's very unlikely because Orono has already passed or adopted that contract. And so that portion of it is already done, just for your information. So I understand you have a lot of things to consider here, but from my perspective, as I said, I am under a time crunch, and I think this is very, very important that we can get this matter approved and start that selection and training process so that we're prepared for next school year. So,
Just one question, when you said you wanted to have somebody trained in by May 30th. Can you explain that a little bit? Why it wouldn't be by the beginning of the school? I don't get
yes.
that part.
Mayor, that very, very good question. As you know, we have a current, our school resource officer, current school resource officer is Pat Cummings. That's normally a 3-year assignment. We extended him for 1 additional year, just because there were some questions about how and when we were going to do the SRO and those things, contract talks, so we felt it was best just to extend him rather than put someone new in there. 4 years is a long time in that position, and in order to train someone, they basically have to go up there and shadow him for a couple of weeks. So in order to have them ready for next school year, we would have to complete the entire selection process and then get them off our schedule, the patrol schedule, and get them with him for a week or two so that he can get them trained in and introduced and all the things that go along with that prior to the end of this school year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So what's our pleasure?
I understand Chief Fall's concerns, but I'm wrestling with the fact the 21st of April was not that far away, and Mayor Fisher was at that also. Mike, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I would maybe concur with, I think, what Mayor Vanderlyn is suggesting, that I know Mayor Fisher's gone this evening, and given that you and Mayor Fisher and myself have been involved with talking to the school district to this point, that we would connect, based on your direction here, connect with Mr. Borg, see if we can't line up a discussion between ourselves and the school representatives again before the April 21st council meeting, and then we can report back. We can meet with the school and report back to the full council. I think we have 2 council members missing this evening, so that way we could report back to the council on the 21st and decide what would be the appropriate next steps on this.
Yeah, I guess I mean, that's what we did way back in November, and we had asked for some decisions prior to the end of the year. And then that went on through January, and then February, and then finally we said, hey, we need an answer. What are we going to do? And so that was the last resolution, March 1st. Well, we never heard anything until March 10th, and now they're coming back to us and giving us a deadline, okay? Which I understand the importance of it, and again, I understand the importance of having someone there. But I guess I would like to really clarify and make this two separate issues. I didn't like the idea of a gift with strings. I just hung up about that. So I'm okay. Let's do it. Let's see if we can meet with Mr. Botts and discuss this again. And please don't print something like "give me something with strings." You know, I don't want to. That did not set well.
So we're gonna
Gifts
table
don't have
it.
strings.
So we need a motion to table it, correct,
Make a
or don't
motion
we?
to table it till the next meeting.
There would be appropriate action as to.
Okay.
Second it.
The second, and do we have any ayes?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. We will be in contact with the West Tonka School District and.
Correct,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and Council, so I'll make contact with Mr. Board, get something established as soon as we can, given everyone's schedules. So I think, as I understand it, and the school district has given us a proposal for a contract. I think what you've expressed here this evening is that let's revisit the terms of that contract and certainly discuss the value of the contract and the services they're receiving and what they're paid.
And I believe you still have the initial proposal that we went there with.
That is
I'm
correct.
assuming you still have that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have anything else on the agenda?
Not for business items, Mr. Mayor. Administrative items 7, we have agenda item 7.
Oh, okay. And that's claims, right?
Correct.
Do I hear a motion to approve the claims?
I have one question.
Okay.
And this again, not to beat a dead horse, but I noticed in the claims, if I can find it here, there was a check issued for, if I recall, Kennedy engraving for $2,400. $2,467 for water treatment plot land acquisition. Is that for the school?
Yes.
Is that, so we've got an investment in it? That's my only question, because we have spent money at this
Right.
point on that school issue.
Yeah, as I mentioned last time, as soon as it looked like we were not going forward, I ceased any kind of work, but that was,
But that was building up until then?
yes, yes.
Okay. Correct. That's the only question I have. Other than that.
Any other ones?
Nope, I make a motion to approve.
Do I hear
Second it.
Second. Do we have any ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approves 3-0. Before we wrap this up, there is something that I would at least like to bring up. I don't know if we want to bring it back to the next council meeting to discuss a little bit. It has to do with data practice requests. I see we've gotten one that I'm not really sure what it is. I think it's a fishing expedition, but I understand that the public has the right to request data. I'm concerned though, the reason I'm concerned about it is the staff time it's gonna take to try and put this thing together. I don't know.
What's this all about anyway?
On the latest one?
Do we know anything about this? Do we, do we need to hire extra staff to do this? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I think Terry's the
How
one.
many have we done this now? And I know we've done one time, we haven't done it for somebody. Somebody asked it, I think, at one time. I can't remember the circumstances, but wasn't there a property owner once that asked for some information like that too?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna, I don't know if we can name names, but this came up about, 6 months ago or something, and a resident requested, personal emails from the council, and if I'm not mistaken, Ron, you can maybe chime in on this, I thought we were advised that we didn't have to give one, but, I could care less. I mean, if a resident wants to come to my house and look at my emails, knock yourself out, I don't care. But I don't want our staff, meaning Terry, to sit here until 10 o'clock for how many nights, putting some of this stuff together. If you're looking for something, give us give us what you're looking for, but just to say, I want everything. I mean, it's gonna be hours and hours and hours of work, and it's gonna cost the city a lot of money. Like I say, if we're looking for something, let's narrow it down a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what we do. I don't know how we charge for it, if we don't charge for it.
I can see if, we continue on, I mean, you could have 20 of these in the next, during this process of the water treatment thing, I could see 20 requests coming in.
Mr. Mayor, Terry can probably answer the charging issue, but these things are expensive. There's no doubt about that. But the city has a legal obligation to respond to them, and people can ask for any amount of information that they want. The two requests that you've got, I think, speak for themselves in terms of what they're looking for. I'm not sure what request you're talking about previously. There is a difference between public and private information. One of the reasons the staff has recommended before that you use your city email is to prevent the mixing of private and public information. It does get more difficult and more difficult for you and difficult for staff when you use private email and private accounts for public business, because those two become subject to the Data Practices Act. If everything were kept on your city emails, that problem wouldn't exist. Nonetheless, this city and every other city has to respond to the data practices request. Sometimes they can be quite burdensome, but we have to do it.
Well, like I say, the last one that I remember had to do, how do I jog mine without naming some names, had to do with, they were looking for emails between council members and the city of Victoria, and had to do with some inspections. And like I say, at that time, if my memory serves me right, that was the recommendation, was we didn't have to give it. Like I say, I could care less. I'm not, there's nothing to hide here. I don't get it. I mean, what would be, if we were trying to do something that's out of line here, I could understand it, but we're going above and beyond to try and make sure, and I'm assuming it's connected with the water treatment plant because of the request being anything to do with the water treatment. It would have been a lot simpler for everybody just to said, fine, we're just gonna do the minimum. We don't care about our residents. We've spent hours and hours on this thing, and this is to give our residents better water. I mean, what are we hiding? I mean, that we're working our tails off? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not hiding that part of it, and I don't think our residents would expect us to hide it. I think our residents expect us to do our jobs, and what they put us here for is to make sure that the decisions are made, the best possible decisions, get all the options. And this, to me, is offensive. And I know nobody has, nobody here had anything to do with it, but it's very offensive that we get a request like this that's so out of whack. I know we get requests from a lot of people, and some people would argue the same thing. This, I think, is just so over the top, such a fishing expedition that, like I say, it offends me, that we've worked this hard to get this far on this thing, and I think tonight we're finally there. We've got proposals from 3 different companies.
We finally now can put out something in the press that will say it's going to be this much, or this much, and not guessing it's gonna be $4 million more, $10 million. We're not gonna be guessing, we'll know. And then we have something to put out. And in the meantime, there's all kinds of mud being thrown here that is unnecessary, because we're trying to give the best we can for the people.
And
And they don't understand it's very complex. As I said before, they don't really care how to build a wash, they just wanna know what time it is.
Yeah. Like I say, I personally, the person that made this request, I'm not gonna name a name, I would ask that, I would like to have him contact me about this, because like I say, I'm offended by this. And if he can give me a good reason, and he can come to my house, and like I said, he can look at my emails, I don't really care, there's nothing here to hide. But I want a reason why the city is gonna be wasting, I would say wasting, or spending a lot of staff time on something that I have no clue what this person is thinking. But I know legally it is what it is. I make a plea to this individual that he reconsider what he's doing here, because I think this is, like I say, offensive to the council, and most of all, probably the staff, because obviously this person doesn't value our staff's time. If he's willing to waste this much time of our staff, I don't think that he values our staff much. So, like I say, I just wanted to touch on this. I don't know if anybody else has any comments about this.
You call it offensive, I call it harassment.
Well, it is, and maybe we need to look at the way we're being compensated for this. Do we have any options? You know, it's just, okay.
Well, again, Terry can comment on that.
There's, I would just, well, Terry can comment, but I would just add
Go to the podium.
to it that, you know, as Ron mentioned, data practices, there's a whole state statute on it. And there's obligations that any government entity is required to fulfill. And so anyone, regardless of motives or what anyone's prerogatives are in data practice requests, they can ask for it. It can be very voluminous. And you, as a council, have seen two most recent data practice requests. I'd asked Terry to just give you the kind of overall flavor for the volume that we get, because it goes beyond what you see here. This is just involving you, but we fulfill data practice requests weekly, multiple requests weekly, year in and year out. And so it does take a lot of time. There's no question that fulfilling data practice requests takes a lot of staff time. There's a lot of resources used, and it's not just limited to the two that you have in front of you.
No, I realize that, and that's why I brought it up. It's not just this. This just kind of, the last two kind of brought this to a head, in my mind anyway, is, you know, do we need to reevaluate? If we can even. Doesn't sound like we can. You know? So, I don't know, maybe what kind of time are we talking to do this stuff?
Well, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this is something that is time consuming, but this is not actually an unusual request. It is only unusual in that it involves you. We get these kinds of requests for staff emails and other materials all the time. In fact, one time since my tenure here, I received a request and it was for 2.5 file drawers of data. It's not unusual. A lot of cities deal with this. Statutorily, when people come in and make a request, we are not permitted by state statute to ask their identity or the reason why they want the data, unless it involves private or confidential data. And so the name of the requester has been released to you because there's a potential that it involves some, you know, private or confidential data. So the name was requested. And also in terms of charging for data, state statutes limit us to charging 25 cents per single-sided black and white copy, up to 100 pages. And then we have to choose, if it goes over 100 pages, the city has to choose whether to charge that 25 cents per page or to charge an hourly rate. If we decide to charge an hourly rate, we are limited to charging the hourly salary of the lowest paid employee authorized to do the work. And so that is reflected on our fee schedule every year, and that is updated. So if you know, and it is burdensome and cumbersome for cities. It's a statewide problem. It's a nationwide problem. If you read the paper, there's these data request things all in the media all the time. You know, if you don't agree, it would have to be a legislative action, because all we can do is follow the state statutes. But what I would recommend to the council, if you're concerned about data practices, I would recommend Mary Teachin from Kennedy and Graven is actually well known all over the state. She does presentations on data practices. I would recommend adding that maybe to a work session and have her come in and do a data practices training.
very good idea.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Well, like I say, it's, you know, obviously there's nothing we can do about it. It's disheartening when you put this much time and effort into a project and this happens, but it is what it is, so we deal with it. So, thank you for the information.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just plain ridiculous. I delete my emails almost weekly and think nothing of it. Now all of a sudden for someone to say, oh, you shouldn't have deleted your emails. Who in the hell would know that? That's what I'd like to know. Were we ever told that? Absolutely not. So there you go.
What do we do in that? And I called Frontier today to find out where my archives are, and they say, well, unless you archive them yourself, they're gone. I mean, I end up with about 3 months worth, and then they just go away.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, what happens then? Are they just gone? I mean, they told me that you can't get them, that you have to create folders, and as you all know, I'm not much in computers, and so I need to start putting them in folders, I guess.
We will, I think as suggested, we can bring some experts in to revisit data practices. I would remind the council a couple things that we had our HR attorney, Mr. Walsberger, in a work session a couple years talked about data practices. So we've had Mr. Walsberger here with the council on data practices. We cover data practices during council orientations. So those are topics that are covered during council orientation. We also send council members to newly elected officials conferences where that topic is a big one that's covered. So there is some exposure to the council for that.
Well, unfortunately, every action has a reaction, so.
Yeah, it is what it is.
What happens is when you have one, you're gonna have another, because every action is a reaction.
So we deal with it. So, I think we're at what, council reports?
That is correct.
Okay. Arlene?
I have nothing.
Bob?
Monday night, 5:30 to 7, Borough Oaks Country Club, WCC. West Ock Community Commerce is having an event at the Borough Oaks Country Club. 5:30 to 7.
Which date?
Monday.
Monday, next Monday?
Yeah.
I take it?
24th.
Okay.
No. The next Monday, 14th?
14th.
14th, next
Okay.
Monday.
Okay.
Open bar.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding.
I know you were.
It's a legitimate meeting. It's being actually the West Ock DECA is going to be doing something.
Okay. Great.
So that's it.
Staff reports?
Couple things real quick, Mayor and Council. April 21st, with our work session, just a couple things that we're planning for in terms of topics. One is Planning Commission candidate interview. We do have an opening on the Planning Commission, so we'll be interviewing a candidate as part of our normal process. We'll also be talking about the city-owned tax forfeited property up on Jennings Bay. And we'll also have, I think Mr. Whisker may be here from MCWD to help facilitate a conversation with us. Mark Erickson and our engineering staff and public works staff want to talk about a water meter upgrade project. So water meters, we're talking about water meters and the age of our water meters and a plan of attack for replacing water meters. We also have probably a conversation scheduled, talk about the Dutch Lake Knoll development project. There's some recent activity and there's some conversation we need about Dutch Lake Knoll. So again, 4 or 5 things there for the work session. Did put in your packet, Mayor and Council, is some upcoming meetings. Let's see here, there's an AIS task force meeting coming up on Friday, April 11th. That's on page 276 of your packet. There's also Lake Minnetonka Conservation District 2014 Lake Minnetonka Boater Safety Education Program coming up on Saturday, April 26th. That's on page 277 of your packet. Also, there is a West Metro NEMO workshop, which is linking land use to clean water. That is also coming up on May 14th is the closest location at the Bayview Event Center. That's also on page 275 of your packet. So again, a lot of area agendas dealing with environmental issues if you're interested.
On the planning committee, you said there's an opening,
On the Planning Commission, that is correct.
planning commission. Who are we losing?
Mr. Abel, help me with that one.
John Watson.
John Watson, yes.
John Watson.
John Watson had to resign. He got involved in another nonprofit organization that had conflicting meeting schedules, and there's 2 years left on his term. So this, we did receive one application for replacing, to fulfill the 2 years that were left on that term, which you'll be seeing at the next meeting.
Yeah, it just seemed unusual that it was at this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing, and I know we've talked about this, and I would like to ask Mike, can you get us your review sheets out tomorrow? We were looking for them already back in February. So hopefully by the end of today to tomorrow, that you're gonna have that to us.
Okay.
So, anything else?
Good done, Mr. Mayor.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion to adjourn. I hear ayes.
Aye.
Aye. Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
I tell you, I just cleaned my note, I tell you.